Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning. Am I the only one on?
Pregnant is getting everything going here. Beginning group. Issue. We've got Ivan here in person. So, we're gonna give it a few minutes and get started.
Thank you. We get some.
Ravens.
Yeah, can everybody see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Does anybody know? They just might. Okay. All right, we'll give everybody a few minutes, like I can just have to do this. Any questions so far? Other than, sorry. If most people are gonna be. Let's get started. My name is Craven's log it, and I'm with Community Commercial Real Estate. My name is they're doing it quiet. My youngest son, he's got a real estate license, but he's focusing on a little more than. But anyway, so I primarily do tenant representation and investment sales, which is kind of what we're talking about today. It's the how to create wealth in commercial real estate, and it's kind of, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing as residential. You know, you buy assets, you get cash flow, you take that cash flow, you put it into other assets, and you just wash, rinse, and repeat. The only thing is with commercial, it's there are a lot of different asset classes that you can invest in, and it really just depends on your risk tolerance, you know. So the next slide, which is how to create wealth. Okay, so first of all, you need to have what's called positive leverage. Just like in residential, the best return is really when you can borrow money and put equity down and use your full cash pool to invest in several assets as opposed to just putting all your eggs in one basket. So one thing that you can, the main thing or the main way to achieve positive leverage is to make sure that your debt cost is less than your cap rate. It seems pretty simple, but that's really important. All right, so the next slide is picking the correct asset, and that could be like I just talked about briefly, your risk tolerance. You know, how much you want to roll up your sleeves and get involved. You know, if you just want mailbox money, you know, where you have invest in, let's say, Chipotle that investment. What you can do is just get a check. Well, there's those options, right? And then the return is going to be a lot less, but you don't have to worry about it. Those kind of assets, I mean, if the roof
Talking
falls
about
in,
tenant presentation in the case of Chipotle running a space. Is that what you're talking about?
no, it's like so like on a triple net investment, like you have, let's say, a single tenant like a Chipotle or a Dollar General. Okay, they lease the space. You as an investor own it, right? But let's say if the roof takes it, the tenant's responsible. Okay. If there's a structural problem, the tenant pays for it. So you have no responsibilities, and you just collect the check. So if a tornado takes out the entire building, the tenant still has to pay rent. Okay, so it's one of those no headaches. So when we talk about risk tolerances, the way I look at it is, your cap rate and the spread or the delta between the 10-year treasury. You know, if the 10-year treasury is paying, 3.5%, and your investment is close to that, you might have want to do it. Because look, the no headache money is the U.S. Treasury. The de facto risk is the 10-year treasury. So you want some sort of spread on top of that. So let's say the 10-year is a 3.5%, and your Chipotle or Dollar General investment is 5. Well, I mean, 150 basis points over, is that real? How much risk am I really taking? So, you still might want a little bit higher return based on. So going back to, and then you have everything in between. Then you have some responsibilities. Roof does okay, then you're responsible for it. Or if there is a structure problem, you're responsible as landlord. But all the other issues that come up, the tenant has to take care of. So as you get into a situation where there's more responsibilities as a landowner or an owner, your spread over the 10-year treasury needs to be a lot higher, right? Because you're taking on more risk and more capital. Look, I mean, I'm spending more money. So and this is what kind of goes, the risk is basically based on the delta between the 10-year treasury and the going in cap rate. The more greater, so high risk is low credit tenants, high vacancy, property and disrepair, et cetera. There are a lot of people or a lot of investors out there that want property back. They don't want to do it. They want to create their own value. So they want to buy assets with industrial, retail, office, what have you. But they want those situations where they're going to have to put capital into the deal. They're going to have to lease up the space, but they're going to want, a cheaper price, right? They're the ones that are going to create that value. They're taking most of the risk, so they want to be rewarded down the line. So one of the things, a lot of this is very intuitive, I know, but you need to don't overpay. That's obvious in anything, right? But the way you don't overpay is how you underwrite the deal. Do the what if scenario. What if this happened? What if this happened? What if this happened? If Murphy's Law comes out of nowhere, plan for it, and back into your purchase price, right? And if those things don't happen, then you're that much better off ahead. But they do, and they will happen.
So let me ask you a stupid question.
Yep.
Can the average Joe, with not that much cash, buy one of these shopping center, even if it's small or something like that, or can you use other people's money or get hard credit lending? Yeah.
So, yeah, so you can pull your money, like let's say somebody wants to be a sponsor on the deal and pulls money, and that's the equity into the capital stack, and it goes out and gets the loan, and like you can participate in that. As far as like, if you don't have a whole lot of money down, just keep in mind that if you go to a bank, number one, it's not going to be a traditional bank usually because they're not into investor properties. But I have lender money. I do, but when you think about it though, you're going to need at least about 35%. Okay. So you just back into your number. You can, whatever amount of money you want to invest in, just figure you're going to be putting in 35%.
Okay.
Great question. Let's see, there's that.
Right.
Hard to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Hey, at the beginning, it just seems big. It seems like.
It seems like people get it all about it's gonna be a big number. That's not really the case at all. Hey, can people hear you now? Zoom in, because I'm getting some. Like, can people hear me? Anybody can chime in? And then clear.
It's still bad.
Well, I guess people hear me or.
Agent.
So it's hard to understand. Zoom land. The Zoom land.
Is that Texan accent?
I think it's hard to hear on Zoom.
We can hear whoever's asking questions better.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
Take a step forward, Cravens.
Okay.
Is that better?
Is that better now?
That's a little better.
It still sounds like you're pretty far away.
But this is, I mean, people usually stand there. I wonder if Jessica can turn up the volume of the thing
Maybe it's for volume button.
on the mic.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
You may go see if she can come in.
Yeah.
That's actually better.
That's better, actually, yeah.
I was getting further away.
Actually, the mic is right here next to me. Or
Oh.
underneath.
Right there's good.
Right here is good. Okay, that's great. I'm furthest far away from the speaker.
Maybe protect
Okay,
that.
good. All right, well,
It's September.
maybe we should kind of recap then. if
When I was
wasn't
25, she was 22. Dated for 3 years and eventually got married. She was a very wonderful person and I couldn't ask for a better girlfriend. While we were planning a wedding, she mentioned that her ex-boyfriend offered to DJ for free. They dated for 3 years when she was 15 to 18, and it was a
Are we
clean
supposed to
breakup.
hear Remy's
He
right
was
now?
also married, so I really didn't have a problem with it. I mean, free DJ service. So we get married and go to the reception. Everyone is having a grand time. I was talking with a buddy of mine and in the corner of my eye, I see the DJ ex-boyfriend staring at something. I look.
IRS e-file is open. File your Fed and state taxes for $0 with TurboTax. Simple tax return.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Amy,
Good morning, Mickey.
Good morning.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what was going on to make it, but we're working on it.
and
Can
then
you come here? It's okay now? Just see about that stool and see if they can hear you. They should be able to pick it up from there. Can you guys hear us okay?
we can hear you.
Is it any better, any different?
It's better, but it's never great even on team day, quite honestly.
Okay. Just, you know what, you're not screaming. And maybe if Ronnie wasn't muted earlier.
How about now? Can you hear okay now?
better.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is if you turn around to look at the TV while you're talking is when it gets real bad. So just make sure whenever you're talking to face towards the room instead of looking at the screen behind you.
No, great point, okay.
Do that.
Get ready forward.
You read forward this way. And then that way you're talking.
Oh, right.
And you should teach it.
I need to read the cursor.
I'm sure that it will look like forward into it. Okay, so that way you can talk and.
Okay, all right, here we go.
So my commercial property is easier than putting on a Zoom thing.
I know, right? Okay. All right, we'll bypass this particular area. Okay, making sure, real quick recap, just make sure that your cap rate is higher than your debt cost. And picking the right asset, did everybody hear about this, picking the right asset?
No.
Okay, so when we talk about assets in commercial real estate, you know, there are several different asset classes. You've got office, you've got retail, you've got industrial, you've got specialty like self-storage and hospitality. So when I say pick the right asset, the one that you kind of feel the most comfortable with. Now, you might not feel comfortable with any kind of asset, and then that'll also lead you into a particular direction. Like, I don't want a whole lot of responsibilities and things like that because I don't understand it. There's ways to create wealth in commercial real estate, but there's a large spectrum. So I think pretty much everybody understands, what retail shopping centers look like. But there's responsibilities that the landlord has that you might not necessarily like if, there was problems with the HVAC, or there's problems with the roof or the structure, or any number of things, the landlord is gonna have to pay for some of those items. And those are capital expenditures that you're gonna have along the life of owning that particular asset. If you don't want any responsibilities, you can also go into retail, but you would want, what we call like a triple net absolute lease, where the tenant is responsible for everything. It's gonna feel like, the tenant is gonna feel like they own that particular property because they're responsible for everything, but they're actually a renter. And we'll go into more of that particular asset class. Also picking the right asset in commercial real estate is, trying to find the amount of spread that you want over the 10 years treasury. So if you have a value add property, you're gonna want 200-300 basis points over the what the current 10-year treasury is saying. That's what I would look at, and that's how I kind of look at it. I look at the 10-year treasury is the no headache money, no risk. I will get my money no matter what, and then everything else falls off from that. I mean, there is risk in everything except the 10-year treasury. I guess there is risk in that, but they don't seem to be turning off the printing machines. You may get less money from an inflation standpoint, but you are going to get your money back.
So you like something like 3 points, at least 3 points above it?
Depending upon
The asset.
that particular asset class.
Okay.
Like value add, you might be going, 600 basis points over, because you're taking a lot of inherent risk. You're putting a lot of capital. You buy an asset that's got a roof problem, you gotta replace that. You gotta go in there, gut it. You gotta get all these spaces or space into a format where somebody can actually use it, right? And there's a lot of capital that goes into that.
Gotcha.
So, again, high risk, it means low credit tenants, high vacancy, property in disrepair, lots of work that needs to be done by the owner. But there's a lot to gain on the upside. Those particular properties have the best upside because the owner is the one creating the value. So again, don't overpay. And the way you don't overpay is you underwrite the deal. You project out what you think this particular asset can do and all the pitfalls that you perceive that you might incur along the way. And then you back into the number you're willing to pay. So this is kind of a picture of some, like a high risk, but high reward asset. And this, like living in Atlanta, you could see this particular kind of scenario or building, but right across the street, there's, a trophy office space. So you look at it and go, you know what, I'm willing to take the risk on that. Okay. And by the way, I can think of a bunch of amenities that this office complex might want, like a coffee shop, a sandwich shop, or any other things. Yeah, so get creative. I mean, this is like how you get creative too. Like, look at a situation, figure out what might work well, given the current layout. I mean, this isn't, we're not splitting atoms over here. I mean, this is like everybody.
Let me ask you a question I just came up with. Like in a case like this, you're coming into an area that is in disrepair. Can you talk to the city and say, look, I'm thinking about doing this and that and the other. What can you guys do? Not so much for me or for the community, but it will impact me as well.
Yeah, you're talking about more of a regional impact. The city and counties, they don't get involved unless you're providing a lot of jobs or it impacts a lot of people because they've got to go get the money too. So it's, and they have to sell this concept that you're bringing, you know what I mean? So you just want to go to the city and just let them know what you're doing and if it's an approved use, and hopefully they'll approve. So, and then there's some risk assets, not necessarily, credit tenants, but good established tenants. Landlord will have some responsibilities such as, roof structure, common area maintenance, and other kind of responsibilities. Retail shopping centers kind of fall on this category. Industrial parks, smaller industrial parks, not the $1 million, or not the 1 million square foot buildings. They have different, responsibilities. And what we call mom and pop businesses, right? They're good, established, businesses, but they're not really national credit. They're not publicly traded, things like that. And I'll get into all that too, because just because you have a national or credit tenant doesn't necessarily mean that's no risk. I mean, Carvana, I don't know if y'all saw this in the news or not, but Carvana just said, we're getting out of our lease at the State Farm building. I mean, they're going through some problems. So those big names sound great until they aren't great. And then when you're stuck with a tenant that takes up 60% of your building, and all of a sudden they're having cracks in the system, that's a crack in your system, and the bank comes and calls.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Because the bank in commercial can come after you even if you're not late. Can they?
So,
be-
yeah, so there are a lot of things, there's a stack of papers that you sign. And most people don't know what they look like until there's a problem, and then everybody becomes real smart when there's a problem. I've always said that the education is on the way down, not on the way up. You don't learn anything on the way up because you think you're a genius, right? You ever heard that scenario or seen people get the right answer for the wrong reason? Okay, that applies. So this is kind of a picture of some assets that have some risk, like a Holiday Inn, you have a Mr. Car Wash, you have this little industrial, park, public self-storage, they're publicly traded. And then you have like a retail center down at the bottom. And by the way, it just depends. Every investor has their own criteria of what they want to do. You just have to find yours. Some people just want one tenant. They only want to deal with one problem, right? And then others want multiple tenants because, well, what if one moves out? I want the others to take care of it. I mean, there's no right or wrong reason, and that's why there's so many different out there. Everybody has their own risk tolerance. Right. So low risk is high credit tenants. This is a picture of a Walgreens. Now, have any of y'all seen like some old pharmaceutical, like a Walgreens or an Eckerd's that have gone out? There's nobody in there.
Right.
Yeah. Well, guess what? They're still having to pay the rent. Okay, that's why these people want these things.
Your screens are just shut.
Yeah.
I took this share screen off earlier. Oh, we're trying to do that. Can we get these slides later?
Yeah,
Perfect, then.
you don't need to take pictures. Yeah, if anybody wants these, the slide, I can email them to you. So going back to, let me go. Okay, real quick, since y'all didn't see it in Zoom land. Okay, these are high risk assets, but high opportunity. You've seen it in Atlanta. They've gone through these gentrification areas where you have, Class A buildings across the street from dilapidated, but, those are worth looking into. Those are opportunities. Some risk assets are non-credit tenants, but good established tenants like self-storage and things like that. They still have some risk involved, but still good opportunities. These are some of the risk assets: Mr. Car Wash, public self-storage, an industrial park, Holiday Inn, and the retail that you see every day when you drive by to work and wherever else you're going. And then the low risk are the ones that I was just talking about, where you'll see these dark Walgreens where there's, they've moved out, they've moved on, but they're still having to pay rent. Okay, so they're still obligated to pay rent whether anybody's in there or not. And that's why some people prefer those assets. You're not gonna make a lot of money, but you are gonna make some money. So if that building blows over, they're still paying rent.
So that's the mailbox money.
That's the mailbox money. You're not gonna make a gajillion dollars doing it, but hopefully, and we'll talk about
It would be
this.
a steady stream of just a little extra.
It's a steady stream of money, you know, you can always diversify your real estate portfolio to include mailbox money, value add, high risk, you know, and it collectively turns into, you know, a decent return. But you diversify it, so depending upon what's doing well, you do well, you know, just like an investment portfolio. Real estate portfolio is no different. This is what I call the no headache money. No headaches, no phone calls, just collect your money. These are low risk assets like Chipotle, Amazon, Apple, McDonald's, Google, Publix. You know, you don't have to worry about getting your money, right? You make, so it's interesting to me that the most valuable companies take the longest to pay. They hold on to their money to the very end,
Sure.
you know? And
But-
it's,
Does McDonald's own most of their land and buildings?
they own a lot of it, yeah, but they will come, you know, you can, like, there's a McDonald's that just sold in Sewanee. You know, so an investor will own that,
Okay.
and McDonald's pays rent, yeah. Same thing with some Publix, Google. I wanna talk a little bit about Google and Apple, because let's say we have this office situation right now where Google and Apple have taken a lot of office space, right? And they're still obligated to pay, but come renewal, Google and Apple may not decide to keep that same kind of footprint. So then you got a hole, and how big of a hole? These are the kind of things you have to underwrite, and not many people underwrote the fact that Google and Apple aren't gonna be taking as much office space. By the way, I just wanna, I don't care what you think about Twitter, but Twitter had a lot of office, and Elon Musk to renegotiate the rent that it had in place. And the way he negotiates rent is he stops paying rent. And you get lawsuits and things like that. So you look at these names and go, okay, I'm safe, but there's always some risk.
I was thinking the same thing. They'll probably stop paying and take me to, you know, sue me. They got a little more power to represent themselves with attorneys than you do.
All right, so here's something I wanted to show you. So this kind of, this sheet right here that you're looking at, this form is, you can apply it to any of the assets that I just talked about. You buy a particular property for 100,000. You get a loan for 65%, you do a 20-year amortization, your interest rate is 7.5%, so therefore you're 35% equity. And you just go down the list and you can see, you know, what the loan amount is, you know, what the asset, what kind of income the asset produces, what the expenses are, what the annual income is for the asset, the expense increases, disposition cap rate, and your annual appreciation. So what it is on this performance projection, this is probably the simplest form you can do. This is what we call the back of an envelope kind of assessment, right? If it passes this, we can go to the next stage. This isn't really necessarily underwriting the deal because we haven't taken into credit loss, we haven't taken into commissions, we haven't taken into capital replacements in year 3. We haven't done any of that, right? This is just the 12,000 foot view. Should I even go to the next level, right? But right now, this particular asset looks pretty good. You have an income of 150,000 the first year, expenses of 45. Your net income is 105. Your debt service is 60, call it 63,000. So after debt, this particular asset, and this is before taxes too, so I'm not even talking about taxes, that's another whole class on how to depreciate and all the other stuff. But right now, in year one, you have $42,000, right? You put in what, 350, so this cash on cash return, year one, 12%, year two, 13. Pretty good returns, right? I mean, this again, before taxes. So, and then this is one way, people measure if they want to go forward. Cash on cash return is probably the most common. Internal rate of return, you'll hear that too. I could go into it on another deal, but it's a little bit more complicated. But if I'll have any questions, I can go into that. Another measure that people use is what we call an equity multiple. Like, when am I going to get my money back? You know, there are some investors right now that they look at a cash on cash and they go, I don't care about any of that. When am I going to get my money back?
Right.
Okay. So in this particular investment, right somewhere between years 6 and 7 is when they're going to get all their money back. Because year 7, you have a 1.14 times their original investment.
I see.
Okay,
Can you point at that, where you're looking at?
right here. And here,
Between 6 and 7.
between 6 and
Yeah.
7.
Six and
Okay,
seven.
And then I put in some charts, you know, some people are more visual, you know. It's like if you see right here on this particular chart, you can see somewhere right about here is where you break even. Now, some people might look at that, and go, forget it, that's too long to get my money back.
Right.
But another, like a lot of others, they're looking at this going, I'm getting 12% first year, why wouldn't I do that, right? And then another thing is like, you can kind of project out, what you think the underlying asset is. We're only talking about cash flow here. There is that appreciation component of the underlying asset. So if you put in, and this is a I can change, I can show you how the sheet will change. But anyway, so right now we have an annual appreciation of 3%, for the asset. So if you come down here to, projected sales price, in year 1, $1.5 million, you bought it for $1 million. Year 2, you can see all the way down. In year 10, given a 3% annual rate of return or annual increase, you're at $2.2 million in year 10. If on a cap rate, on an annual appreciation, you're at 1.3. So it's whatever you think is more realistic. I like to put both in front of an investor, and they can decide which is more realistic. We used a 7% cap rate on this particular asset. Is that reasonable? I think so. I mean, I'm not going to use 6 right now. I mean, interest rates are so high.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an 8. Now, if you change this to an 8, you know, you're under 2 million in year 10, right? And then your break even gets a little less. See, come down here. No, that'll fill, your cash flow still is the same. But I mean, if we were to adjust, all these you can adjust and you can see how the chart will change. One thing I want to show is that right now, 7.5% is probably kind of what you're looking at. If you were going to underwrite a deal, I would use 7.5%. And, you know, not even in year 10, you know, how you kind of like to see the crossover between principal and interest, where you're going to start paying more towards principal than interest. Yeah, so let me show you what you need to do. Back in the day, when we could get 5, let's see, do 5%. So now, see, you got the crossover between 6 and 7. Now you're paying more in principal and less in interest.
So it kind of makes your break even point.
Yeah, so interest, this is exactly why, you know, interest, you know, when the Fed raises interest rates, you know, this is exactly why it's going to tamper down demand and things like that. You can pay more when the money's cheaper. So see, as you can see on there, you're already crossed over in between 6 and 7, when year 6 and 7, when you start paying more towards principal than interest. And then you also have So anyway, you can see how the annual, you can change these two numbers and it'll change the projected sales price. Now, if you come down to this debt information, this is what banks pay attention to, this DSCR, this is the debt service coverage ratio. And banks really want to see this asset at 1.25 or higher. And in this particular scenario, we're well above that. I mean, we're 2 times. And basically what that is your net operating income is 2 times more than your debt service. So that's good.
Is debt service, what ratio?
Debt service coverage ratio.
Okay.
So your net operating income has to be 1.25 times at least your debt service.
Okay.
And in this case, you know, we're well above that. This looks like a pretty good investment. Interest, sometimes it's good to break out your interest to show how much you can write off, the amount of principal you paid and the outstanding loan amount. I kind of include all those. But this is more or less like how to make money. And again, you know, yes, that's what I prefer. That's what I prefer.
This is so over my head right now.
Yeah, so this is, but keep in mind now, but keep in mind, when even if you're doing residential investment, it's this, you want to do the same exact thing. You do.
Yeah.
Whether this particular part right here, doesn't matter if it's residential investing or commercial.
Yeah.
Same, you go do the same thing.
The numbers.
Exactly.
We know we have to.
So, and then,
The only thing is that we're not contemplating or forecasting a change in the economy or the marketplace. That's the only thing about these things. It's like all things held equal in the economy, this is it, right?
right.
But we can't contemplate a recession or anything like that. It doesn't take into consideration any of that stuff. That's how-
Correct. You know, everything passed today is a yes. And that's why residential investing is a little bit safer in and of itself. And the reason is if you have only a certain amount of money, right? And your expenses exceed that amount of money, you're gonna do whatever you can to make sure you have a place to live, okay? You're not gonna pay your car, whatever, you know, some people say you pay your car more than you pay your house, but I don't know. Those are the 2 things that people, you know, really wanna make sure they pay.
Not so much.
Right, so one of the things, you know, is this area right here, this income after debt, okay? This is how you create wealth. You take this money and invest it in other things, right? So your money never stops. So all these positive cash flows that you get, you either need to live on them, and if you don't, that money can't sit idle, okay? So you actually, another better way to look at this is, once you establish a cash flow off of this particular asset, you can go into more speculative investment at this point, right? The further away you get from your cash flows from your initial investment, that's when you can start participating in things that, you know, have a 20% return, things like that, because you're so far down, if you lost that money, it's not the end of the world, right? It was 3 assets down, you know, or 2 assets down.
And is this also thinking that you're gonna have 100% occupancy and all that kind of stuff? Or is there?
Again, this is the 12,000 foot view on this one. So if you really underwrite the deal, you're gonna have to go in there. You're gonna 100%, I don't care if it's 100% occupied. You have to do it at 95 at the maximum. Some people only use 90% occupied, okay? You're gonna want to reserve in here, right?
Right.
Okay, depending upon your obligation to fix things and your responsibilities, you're gonna have a reserve. The bank might even require you to have.
Sure.
And then you're gonna have to look at, you know, in year 4, I might have to have a capital expenditure. You might have a negative cash flow in year 4. This this particular sheet and based on the assets that we talked about is just to see if it warrants you even to go to underwrite the deal.
Look at it further. and might
Right.
discover it.
You know, like, look, it looks great right now, but that's the best it's gonna look, okay? Now, let's start really diving into, okay, if I have vacancy, if I have to pay commission, if I have to, you know, do tenant improvement allowance, you know? Like, I wanna get this great tenant, and I'm gonna have to put $50,000 into it. Where does that show up?
Or pave the parking lot, put better lights.
All that kind of stuff. So that's, you know, those are the kind of things that you have to think about when you do any kind of commercial. I mean, depending upon the responsibilities, right? We talked about once, you don't have to do anything, you just collect money. No, I need money, I just want my money and that's it. Right. But having said that though, the difference is for residential, like, you know, somebody moves out, you know, you gotta clean up the place, you gotta put new carpet, new paint, new whatever, who knows what they tore up. You know, how do you evict the person? This is like businesses, things like that. You get out, you move on, you get another tenant in there. So, again, a balanced portfolio for creating wealth could be a combination of residential houses, investment houses, and in addition to that, maybe a retail center, right? But I think that we're talking about creating wealth in commercial real estate. It's really the cash flow and what you do with the cash flow after that. It's investing in other things. And my suggestion would be the cash flow that you get from here could go into more riskier investments, right? And then you have those big opportunities to, like, let's say a buddy or friend or wants to sponsor a deal and you just accumulated 300,000 off this investment, you don't need it, give it to them. See what they can do, see what you can do with my money. You know, that's how you create wealth. You have your money working in all different kind of aspects. Commercial real estate is just one way to do it. Are there any questions? I know kind of a lot to take in, but
It's learnable. I mean, you
Yeah.
can learn how to do it. It's just,
yeah, it might seem like
it seems like a lot.
it seems like a lot, but it's when you start underwriting, that's when it gets, and you don't want to start underwriting a deal until you at least pass this point. Okay, and I think we can all agree that this looks like a doable deal, right?
What is your spreadsheet called at this point? What's the name of that
This is the back of an envelope.
Okay.
This is the quick down and dirty.
napkin thing?
Yeah, this is
Quickly
okay.
deciding should you do the deal or not?
shouldn't, well, not necessarily, but then
Or should you tweak your deal?
should I go into the underwriting process?
Okay.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Is it, and if this is a situation where, you know, somebody just gave you this opportunity and said, I need to know right now. Okay, let's go with it, because it looks like it works, and I'm gonna do my due diligence, and then I'll either decide to go forward or I'm gonna bail out. You know what I mean?
Due diligence in commercial is really long, isn't it? Or can be.
It can be, you know, depending upon, it really depends on the deal. I mean, if you were going to do an absolute net deal, due diligence is not gonna be long. There's nothing to do. You know what I mean? You just need to get a clean title and verify a few things. And by the way, on these triple net deals, they're not gonna give you time, because you don't need it. Number one, you don't need it. Number two, there's a lot of activity. And I don't want you tying it up.
Gotcha.
So, apartment complexes, a little bit more complicated, you have to go through the leases, you have to go through there, you know, you have to do estoppel agreements, things like that, you have to figure out, you know, who's behind, who's really behind, you know. Some of these numbers, like it says, the lease says these people are paying this rent, but are they actually? You know, oh yeah, so-and-so tenant's been behind for 6 months, well, where did that show up? You know what I mean? That's what happens in due diligence. And having it inspected, you know, you could go in and the main things that you want to do is make sure there's good structure, got a good roof, and the HVAC. You can deal with pretty much everything else. But if you don't have, if those are a problem, you might want to decide either to hit the eject button or, you know, start renegotiating the price. Or, you know, just come to terms and, you know, meet in the middle. I don't know. I think that was kind of it. Creating wealth is the same in anything, right? You have an underlying asset that appreciates and you have cash flow, so you have both. Any questions from Zoom and anybody in the chat? Let's see.
So the bank is gonna look pretty hard at the DSC, DSCR, the ratio, right? The bank is gonna look pretty hard at the DSC ratio.
Oh, that's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, they do their, you're gonna have to do your underwriting
And they're gonna.
and they're gonna do their underwriting.
Okay.
And they're usually like, you're gonna have to talk them off the ledge. Is usually what happens. So I was just, anybody else have any questions in Zoom land?
Can we get a copy of that spreadsheet?
Yeah, sure. If y'all wanna take my email down,
To be, but I'm not.
it's Cravens, which is C, black type of illness, right?
Analysis, you see, usually it's the one out you had.
Yeah.
I had somebody that came to check it out and I go for it.
Well, what this is doing for me is, like, say I have a client who.
If y'all wanna email me your,
Like, he's an investor.
just email me, say you want the spreadsheet or the slide, I'll send you those, no big deal.
I don't understand, well, I don't always understand, I have a client that
Mm-hmm,
for a while, he's an investor, he, like, as far as he flips houses.
yeah,
He's a
okay,
contractor. And I did this, what this helps me do is it helps me understand him when he says, I won't make any money on that. Or it's not a good investment for me, whatever, because it's like, if it's too high, clearly nowadays, you know, you get a house that's like practically falling down. And they're still charging, you know, they're still asking for a house that needs like move-in ready. He's like,
Right.
you know, and he's like, well, this is gonna cost me this much money for that, this much money for that, it's gonna take this much time to get this back. And then I'm not gonna be able to sell it and make any money, you know, this kind of helps me understand a little bit of that.
and that's what they'll do
Yeah.
in lickety split, this back of the envelope.
So he's like, I don't, he does that, and I'm like, well, how do you know? And he's like, but he's been doing this, so he
It's gonna
knows.
do it, yeah, so you know cost, input cost, things like that, total investment,
Yeah.
this is how much I'm gonna make on this, yeah, done.
So it's kind
Not
of, you
doing it.
know, it helps me understand what's going on in his brain when he goes, nope. I like everything I've been showing him because everything's so right.
And as agents, not only as agents, but investors too, you just need to find out, like you personally, if you're gonna invest in, whether it be residential or commercial, you need to find out what your investment hurdles are. Like, are you more concerned about your cash on cash? Are you more concerned about when am I gonna get my money back? Or are you concerned, are you an internal rate of return person, you know? There's a bunch of different ways to measure an investment. And if you're representing a client, you need to find out what's more important.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can care less, like I always say, if you like it, I love it. So,
Yeah.
but for me, my investment hurdles are different from my clients. Everybody has their own situation and what they view as a good investment or not a good investment. And nobody's right and nobody's wrong.
It's what they need.
It's what they need and, you know, some people are like, oh yeah, that's dumb. No, it's not. It's good for them.
It depends, you have two different people with the same money and everything, but with different risk tolerance. And then one is gonna love it, one's gonna think it's too high, too much of risk. And not gonna do
Right.
it.
And another thing
Different
is,
situations.
here's another way to create wealth. Is if you're representing a client, right? And look, if you're helping them underwrite the deal and you're looking at it. Decide if you want to go into it. Like, hey, you know what? I'll take my commission that I'm gonna make on this and put it into the deal. Would you allow me to do that? Now you become a part owner. You know, and that's an easy way to get into a deal,
Mhm.
right? No money out of pocket, it just goes from one hand to
That's
the
just
other.
like a silent part, potentially like almost like a silent partner.
It's, or you could be,
Because
you
then they know
know,
what they're doing, but you're helping them fund it and then you.
You're a
get
capital investor.
You get a bit of,
Yeah.
like investor, you're getting a bit of the return.
Yeah.
You're doing all.
and by the way, that helps them too, like, hey, if I'm gonna, hey, y'all are gonna go into it, it must be a good deal, because you're not gonna take your hard-earned money that you just made on this and put it in a bad deal.
Yeah.
So it might reinforce to them, it's like, hey, you know, I like what you did on that one. Tell you what, let's look at some other things together. That's another way to create wealth. So you can kind of backdoor your way in, you know, and participate in the deal. And sometimes that's really good to get your money into a deal and really you don't understand how something works until you know, how, you don't know, you know,
I mean,
the person you're gonna marry until you live with them. You don't really know about the investment until your money is actually into
It's
the
a good
deal.
way to learn. I mean, it's a good way to. learn
Yeah.
How to do it.
And when you're talking to people, you know, say, I'm an investor, I do this, I live it. You know,
Yeah.
so that's just.
Take that to your resume.
Mhm.
It's just, you know, it's another thing to add to your resume.
Yeah,
What you do
another-
in your-
Yeah, like,
Have you ever done that? Have you ever put money into put your commission back into a deal, Cravens?
I've done it on, yeah,
Don't do what you think.
Has it worked out well for you?
yeah,
That's awesome.
not everybody is looking for a partner then, keep that in mind.
Don't do what you think.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, and you have to, and you also have to not only, now, there's the other thing too, okay? When you do that, it's not just the investment that you're investing into, it's the partner that you're going in with, right? Okay, so you can love the investment and not like the partner and say, you know what, I don't know if that's the best way to do this deal, you know? But yeah, there's, and a lot of times you'll ask and they'll say no. You know, but just like, I don't want partners, I don't need it, you know, I like to do things on my own. Most of my clients, like doing things on their own, they don't like to answer to anybody. But yeah. Any other questions?
Just make sure everybody has your email so they can send you,
I put it in the chat.
they can send you the email so you can send the slides out.
Yeah, I put it in
Oh,
the
you-
chat. If y'all just email me
Okay.
your, you just email me and
What is it,
and I'll send it out to you.
I have your phone number. I'll
Yeah,
send you the-
it's Cravens at KW. It's pretty easy. Yeah.
You're so smart.
Yeah, I made it simple. Cravens at KW. About what? I mean,
Well, because it's what you do. So.
oh, yeah, I mean, this is like, again, we're not exactly split downs over here. It's just understanding, it's understanding. But this, and I'll just kind of leave with this kind of goes with every kind of investment, whether it's real estate or it's investing in the stock market or any kind of other investment, you'll have to do some sort of pro
Analysis.
forma or analysis to really do it. And again, when you're talking to your clients, you know, when you do something like this, you help them out, they'll be more willing to really like help. Hey, great. They might even ask you like, hey, do you like this investment? You wanna do
So
it?
you gotta make sure you do at least
Yeah,
this.
it looks like you got a pretty good, you know, feeling on this one. So what do you want to do? And you're like, yeah, I'd love to.
What is your take, if I can ask you,
Yeah.
on investing in self-storage units? It seems to me like for many years now, I thought that it's a pretty good deal because you got little tiny units that rent for a ton of money. There's no tenants, there's no water, which is the main thing usually.
I think it's like
HVAC,
100% the way to go.
Right.
Like if I look at an apartment investment and I look at self-storage, I wouldn't even give, and there are plenty of people that make a ton of money doing apartments and that's all they're ever gonna do and that's all they want to do. But I just, again, it's not right or wrong. It's It's just, I don't have the mentality of having a deal, and you can get management companies that you never have to talk to these people, but I don't want to, look, when somebody moves out and they smash up the whole place and they take the appliances and their carpet is burnt, who knows what, right? And self-storage, you sweep it out, you put it back, a lock on it and go next.
There's waiting lists.
Yeah,
And sometimes you hold the locker auction, like it's.
yeah, I mean, honestly, those aren't,
Worse.
those aren't something that people really wanna do. They just
Sure.
want your stuff, get your stuff and leave, because I just wanna put somebody else in here. I don't even wanna go after you what you owe me, just leave. And yes, those are good investments, and
And nowadays, there's some that don't even have management on site or anything like that. There's no boots on the ground, it's just simply.
yeah, there's some kiosks, there's a risk involved in that.
Right, well, they come in, I don't know, every couple of days to check things out and,
Yeah.
or cameras and things like that,
Yep, there's ways to
What
do
about
it.
cell tower investment? If you get a cell tower.
Cell tower investment is still one of those, like, no headache money, sometimes you make it, but you're gonna have a steady cash flow, you'll have a steady cash flow.
I heard about that. I don't know how you go about that, but I'm sure that was an interesting thing, and it was like, you basically don't do anything. The cell towers, I guess, are rented, they're rented out.
Okay.
Yeah, billboards, kind of the same.
Billboards. I mean, that is a way to start really small and get a little bit, so.
There's a guy here that does a lot of billboards.
Yeah, Mulholland,
Mohan, yeah.
yeah, Mulholland does, that's his primary business,
Mhm.
whatever. But I mean, there's a real estate component to it too, so. All right, so anybody else, any more questions, anything? Good?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Thank you,
welcome.
Cravens.
Okay, you're welcome, thanks.
This is my door knocking for the day. If it ever
That's
stops
good.
raining. If it stops raining, I'm handing those out. If it doesn't stop raining, I'm shoving them on the mailbox.